And we are back with the Think Fitness Life podcast for the 6th installment with your host, Matt Gluckman in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Eric Menchie over there in Boston. And today we have a show dedicated to motivation. We have a lot of good quotes and a lot of good examples of individuals out there who inspire us or who motivated us. And we'll talk a little about how to get started and how to stay motivated when you're starting to lose that motivation. I know Eric's got something in the news he wants to mention. We had no questions over the last week, but if you did want to send in a question, it was thinkfitnesslife, all one word, at gmail.com. Next week, we'll go into the squat in depth, talking about different methods and just every little detail of the squat that we can think of. And I'm looking forward to that. So let's jump right in. Eric, what do you have for us for the news from last week?
Well, I kind of found an interesting video. It said parents juggle pros and cons of kids' technology use. And it said a study in 2010 found that 8 to 18-year-olds spend an average of 7 hours and 38 minutes using entertainment media daily. And I just thought to myself, like, holy smokes, that's basically a whole damn school day that a kid's on entertainment. Now, if they're in school, they're either on their phones or tablets, or at home they're playing video games or like glued to these things. And where do you get this chance for physical activity or movement or play? And it's kind of sad to see that technology is actually causing a downfall in the health of society, especially at a young age. And I know we've talked about young kids being out of shape and right now predisposed to diabetes and being overweight. It's sad.
Yeah, 6 7 hours or something? That's a lot. I mean, I was definitely that kid who, after sports, was on my computer playing whatever computer game I could find at the time. I was a big computer nerd and didn't go outside and all that stuff. But then as I got older, everyone loves Netflix, but I would work, like, that would be my initial motivation was like, I don't want to feel like a bum when I am lounging and playing video games and watching Netflix all weekend. So I'm going to work out all week and I'm quote unquote resting and recovering over the weekend. But yeah, I mean, I always bring it back to parenting, and I always look things through history and how we've sort of transcended through time. And, back in the baby boomer generation, or like our grandparents' generation, they had the time to take care of and raise children. And then fast forward, women in the workforce, inflation, cost of living comes up. Now you have 2 members of the household, mother and father, working full time. And when they get home, usually what happens is they want to spend time with their child rather than discipline and be that parental guidance and that advocate, as much as that may suck. Because, at the end of the day, they haven't seen their kid either, and they just want to hang out with them too. And then you have a generation of, I don't want to word this correctly, but a generation of people who lack discipline, who lack physical activity, who have not enough experience of failures in life, quite frankly, and hardships and understanding hard work. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I kind of fall into the same trap mentally. I can even see how I could be like that because, you just kind of want to make him happy and you want him to be the best he can be, and you don't want to be rude to them, or, you always want to uplift them. But at the same time, you just got to be able to say, like, all right, the rule is, I want you happy, but we got to compromise here. You got to get outside, or you got to put the phone down or your game down after, an hour or 2 hours or something. And it comes back to balance,
And it's great that you mentioned it, because it's going to be right along with the topic tonight is, the motivation of these kids once they get behind these video games. They don't really want to do anything but play these video games. And I think technology is great for this world, for society, but I think it gets heavily abused and overused, and that becomes a problem for everyone. Yeah,
it's so easy to get caught down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And I've been there. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I was playing that silly phone game for an hour. Oof, I need to go do something else. But yeah, it's a great tool that we just have to use appropriately. And it's funny as you mentioned that. As soon as you mentioned that, I was thinking that Common commercial that I've seen recently, and he talks about how we are in the greatest generation. We have technology that past generations have just dreamed of, and we have all this at our fingertips. But really, what matters is what we do with it, and it's so true. I think it's a good commercial and it has a good message. Yeah, that's a crazy statistic, crazy article you
Fun
found.
fact of the day, if you realize you're one of those people that spends a lot of time on technology, maybe find a better balance. Maybe shave 1 or 2 hours off of that and then work in a habit routine, and you're going to realize what you can do in that time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into motivation. I think a good way to segue into it is talking about different pathways. So you have intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And for the most part, like your general athlete or majority of your personal trainers who they just enjoy to work out. They enjoy the hard work. They enjoy the suffering. They enjoy the outcome at the other end. And that's more of an intrinsically motivated to want to work out and work hard. And then there's a lot of people who need some sort of extrinsic motivational factor, like sort of not a reward system, but like an incentive and to sort of understand the goals behind it. And if you think about it, the best example I have is children, because a lot of the times to get children to do things, you have to give them sort of an external reason to motivate them to want to do whatever you're trying to get them to do. Half the time they're not intrinsically driven to just listen to you. You really have to it has to make sense in their head a little bit. So right off the bat, it's just kind of about finding that piece. What is it that you want? And what is it that turns you on? And what can you do to better yourself? And the first thing I talk about with a lot of people I sit down with in the beginning is the gym needs to be something, or working out in general, not the gym, fitness, exercise, whatever you do in or out of the gym. It has to be looked at as something you enjoy, as your time, as the time that you're focusing on strengthening and improving your individual self. And a lot of people come to me and it's like it was like a dentist appointment, and it was even hard for them to admit they have to go to the gym that first initial appointment. So that's where I feel like is one issue, just sort of people's viewpoint. And then process versus progress is another big topic. And you can talk a little bit about that for me.
And I think going back to the intrinsic, extrinsic, I think a lot of people try to find more extrinsic than looking deep in themselves and finding what motivates them. And I think that's where kind of society's gone nowadays, is people look for, oh, this is going to motivate me or that's going to motivate me. I'm not saying extrinsic is bad. I think you can use it, but I think majority of it should come from intrinsic. What drives you, your why? Why do you want to do anything? What is your purpose of completing that task or goal? And especially if you're coming to the gym, I ask people, what's your goal? But why do you really want to accomplish this? What is setting this on a higher pedestal in your brain saying, I want this done?
Yeah. I think it's important to note that you can certainly use extrinsic motivation in the beginning, but I completely agree that you should then eventually, through self-analyzation and understanding yourself, I think eventually you will find what intrinsically motivates you. And, right off the bat, I guess a small example would be like somebody doing squats. And I say, well, I don't really want to do squats. They hurt my hips, they hurt my knees, and I heard they're bad for your back, whatever. All that aside, you have to then explain to them, well, you told me your goal was to whatever it is, right? Like look better in a bikini or build your legs stronger so you can have a better upper body. And now I have to kind of extrinsically motivate you to want to do that and link that to your goal. So your goal is to look better. Well, this is going to lead you to that because of X, Y, Z, or whatever. And eventually, when through even their own thinking, before they didn't even know, right? Eventually they start to see, oh, you know what? Like I really enjoy the work I'm putting in. And it might be 6 weeks down the line, 8 weeks down the line when they see that those results they're looking for. And you know what? I just enjoy looking and feeling good. So then they're more intrinsically motivated to continue to work out. So yeah, I completely agree. You should eventually find that intrinsic motivation factor and that passion in your life, because extrinsic motivation can sometimes fall into the trap of just like a quick reward system. And a lot of people will say, oh, I'll go to the gym for the hour today because tonight I'm going to get cheesesteaks. And that's a little bit different. That's not motivation. That's more of just a reward, like a pleasure reward
and I think that's
system.
where, like you mentioned, people get tripped up, and like that's not what it is. It's not a reward, or you're going to get credit for this. This is more just why you're going to do it. I love motivation. I love listening to, motivational speeches, motivational coaches, all that stuff. And we're going to dive into it in a second with all the quotes we have. But I think there's a point where you go from, hey, this is going to motivate me that I listen to a point where if that's not there, can I motivate myself? And I think a lot of people look to these, well, you could even say trainers, motivational speakers, that every time they should be motivated to do something, they have to go listen to them speak or, read about it or whatever it is. I hear people, oh, I read that book. I'm all fired up and motivated. Good. Now go do it and keep that motivation. I feel like people will read something, they'll get motivation, and then next day they lost it, or they're like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't have motivation.
Like it was like an impulse.
But if it sticks,
go ahead. Sorry.
And that's why I really tell people when they read books or they listen to these people, find what that person said and write it down, but like find what it means to them. We can get right into it. What is something that you found that someone has said that really strikes home for you?
There's so many that come to mind that motivate me on a daily basis, but I struggled a lot more when I was younger, not so much now, with anxiety and sort of being my own worst enemy. So I think a quote that I was often reminded of when I would worry and stress out, and more, I've become more learned behavior of just being able to kind of ease my mind with this quote, was worrying doesn't take away tomorrow's troubles. It takes away today's peace. And it just helped me really put it in perspective that I'm going to make my body and biochemistry worse when I stress out and worry. And I need to understand that change the things you can change and forget the things you can't change, because there's nothing you can do about it. Just move on. That's one quote that really helps me stay on the right track every day. And what about you?
Well, I like that quote. I can definitely apply that to everyday life. I think a big takeaway of this episode is, we're going to say a lot of quotes and go in depth with them, but take this quote and apply it to your life. Don't just listen to the quote or say, oh, that's, that sounds cool. Apply it to every aspect of your life. And something like that where that quote I haven't really heard, but it strikes home. Okay, I have a worry about something. At the end of the day, is it really, really worth like ruining my whole day? Taking that piece away, and to repeat this cycle over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think when I listen to it is, okay, how can I break that worry so I can actually get comfortable and not just be in a constant state of chaos?
Yeah. I think a lot of self-reflection helps you find that intrinsic motivation factor, and it really makes or breaks you for your consistency of staying on top of taking care of yourself, quite frankly. Because I always use this analogy with people is like, if you think about time that you get to sort of take care of yourself, it's kind of like an alternator in a car. And if the system, the way that the belts work and the way that the power is operated and sent to different devices in the car, if it didn't make the alternator a priority, it would never recharge the battery and eventually the car would die. So you have to do something that recharges and but takes care of your system, or else eventually you're not going to be at the highest function that you could potentially be at. And now all these people that rely on you, whether it's kids or clients or friends or family, now they also are getting a little bit less help from you. I always use that as a way to motivate people, because it's like a lot of people are like, well, I can't get to the gym because I do this for this person, this for that, and this and this and this. I'm like, listen, if you want to keep helping these people, you have to take care of yourself. And that's the great motivation factor, because it just puts it in perspective in such a way that they can't lose, right? And, you know what I mean? They can't get injured. They can't have a day where they just lay in bed all day, because there's people that rely on them. But there's something about that allows you to find your purpose in life.
Absolutely. And then the biggest thing at the end is purpose. And, you know, kind of going back to your quote, if you spend every day worrying, life goes by pretty quick, and you're going to look back and be like, what was I really worrying about at the end of the day? You know, some people have major issues that you have to worry about. I get it. But I think a lot of times most people have these smaller issues that build up to be complete fear in their mind. And that basically stops them from doing a lot of things that they want to accomplish, or anything, really.
Oh, it's so true. So true. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, dude. Like, especially when I was a kid, I would sit at home if like there was a party or something, and I would just like think about all these negative scenarios and it paralyzed me. I'd be like, well, what if I show up too late and everyone's already there and like they just look at me, or what if I like mess up, or what if I'm quiet, what if I'm awkward, and like all these spiraling negative thoughts. Through practice, was I able to control my thoughts and mediate my thoughts and know, like, tell myself like, no, that's an irrational thought, or no, that's a rational thought. And now, like, yeah, I still have that quick moment of, oh my God, I'm scared to go out, but it's only like maybe a tenth of a second. And then I'm quickly able to go to the pathway of, no, you're fine, relax, move on. And, you know, it's just like anything else, it's learned. And I think a lot of people think it's either given to them or it's not. And that's why I really love David Goggins' story, because he talks about how he had to like create this badass persona that wasn't him, but it was who he wanted to be, and he had to fake it till he made it. And he wanted to be better, he wanted to be stronger, and he would force himself to basically fail. He'd force himself into all these situations because he knew that if he suffered, he'd come out stronger on the other end. I mean, I love his story. David Goggins, C.T. Fletcher, those two guys are two of the most influential people that continue to inspire me. And maybe it's just because CT yells at you all the time in all the videos and fires me up. But either way, both these guys grew up with really troublesome childhoods where they were beaten by their fathers and they knew a lot of suffering and hardships. And when it came time to develop themselves and whatever it was they may be doing, sports or academics, whatever it was, failing was nothing. It was nothing like being beaten by your own father. And because they had that experience, because they had that perspective switch, they would just continue like hungry animals, just like keep going after something that challenged them and just keep going after it. And even if they fail, just keep doing it, keep firing, keep trying. And their stories are just so inspiring because of the mental tenacity and discipline they had, and the drive and fire they had, and also the way that their upbringing sort of downplayed the difficulty of everything else in life. Like one good example is, and I highly recommend going on Joe Rogan's podcast and looking at the David Goggins interview with Joe Rogan, but it's such a good story and he talks about it more in depth. he's just a phenomenal guy. And anybody who tells you he is just a crazy person or he's physically gifted, they're just a small-minded person, because this guy was, almost 300 pounds at his heaviest. He talks about it, about all those man hours he had to put in, all that suffering he had to do, but he came out stronger on the other end. And that stuff just really fires me up, because I didn't have a crazy tough upbringing, but I pushed myself to take the stairs, to take the harder route, because I know on the other end I'm going to be better because of it.
And everyone has a little different experience in life. Some people have tough upbringings. Some people have more of inner battle with themselves. So their experience in life kind of shaped who they are. And I think everyone goes through a time where their experiences in life, good or bad, shape who they want to be and what they are. And a lot of times I tell people, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
Oh, dang. That's a great quote.
That 90% is basically, you changing yourself, you having it in you to say, I'm going to do something different than I've been doing for the last 2 months, 3 months, 5 years, whatever it may be. And some people that is going from the low of the low. Other people, it might be something different, but everyone has their own battle in life, and that should shape people hopefully for the good. And I think a lot of times people let these battles beat them down and win. And life is a series of battles over and over again. You got to look at it. Each day might be a different battle for you. But if you have the mindset of, hey, I beat this huge battle in my childhood, those guys will not be stopped, and nothing's going to break their mental capacity to keep going. And that's where I think a lot of people need to start learning, these small walls that appear in front of you, find a way around them, find a way through them. It's not going to be easy, but you can get through it, and then it will condition your mind to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes a little bit back to parenting, a little bit in sort of the culture we've developed at this point, and the everyone's a winner type deal. And it creates a generation of people who haven't seen failures, and then once they do, they really take it in, they internalize it, and they don't know how to handle themselves. And one key example is Vince Young. He's such a talented quarterback, and in one, I don't know what game specifically off the top of my head, but there was a game where he got booed, and he wasn't used to that type of rejection or that type of negativity, and it just really messed with his psyche. He never really performed at the high level at which he was performing before that. So it's sad, because I just think it has to do with, it's like a muscle, right? It's like learning to get better at that reflex of being able to respond to a negative stimulus or respond to a failure in a positive way versus being reactionary. And a lot of times we just react right away, kind of out of fear, kind of out of disappointment, but we just like react right away. And we have to kind of slow ourselves down. And, the best thing you can do if something bad happens or you fail at something, the best thing you can do is nothing.
Totally. Because
just ponder it, and
every one of those things that you mentioned is like a life lesson. You're gonna take something away from your failures in life, no matter what it is. You will learn, you will adapt, you'll be stronger, you'll become better. You have to have the mindset of a positive outlook on shitty situations, and you have to make the best of them. What I mean by the best is, it might not be, all sunshine and happiness, but you have to figure out how you're going to survive that situation the best you can without that situation burying you in a hole and leaving you with this absolute negative mindset and outlook towards the rest of life, because life continues to move on.
Absolutely. And you have to be able to understand it's just part of the puzzle. Ups and downs are going to happen. Yin and yang, sunny days, rainy days, like it's just part of it. And the more you can understand that, the more that you almost get excited when you fail because you're like, whoo, it's only up from here.
And I think a lot of that, what you just said is, be excited when you fail, is people these days, or maybe kids, don't know what it's like to really fail. So when real hardship comes their way, they almost like panic and go hide in a room and say, I'm going to worry about this. I'm going to complain. I think a big lesson, and this is where I'll get on a rant of participation trophies, is kids at young age need to learn how to lose and not be a winner at everything. And if you take that away from them, you're teaching a valuable life lesson that won't exist when they grow older, and they won't have a concept of how reality actually is. And we all know once you get older, it's the real world. It is a battle every day. You are constantly competing for a job. That's just how we are. And if you tell people that, losing, it doesn't exist, that's a bad outlook, right? And people don't know what the world is about then.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I mean, failing, looked at as a negative thing, promoting this utopia, there's perfection, or like there was an old slogan of love means never having to say you're sorry. And it's like, well, what? That's ridiculous, and a good quote is from Winston Churchill. It says, success is not final and failure is not fatal. And it's kind of like, get used to that chaos, get used to that competitive nature, and get used to learning from a time that you fail or lose in such a way that you will be better next time. And the failure, success is not final thing. 3 great examples. Michael Jordan never made his high school basketball team. Albert Einstein failed calculus. J.D. Salinger, the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye, one of the most influential pieces of English literature, he failed English, dropped out of college. And these people persevered. They ended up becoming some of the most successful people in our life, at least in my life, whatever. And in the past 150, 200 years, these guys are all really effective people at what they do. And they didn't accept failing as the be all end all. And they looked at it as an opportunity to grow, and they just stuck with it.
It's inevitable to beat failure, but failure is what creates drive for people. I'm sure hell created drive for me at a young age, and it still does every single day.
Like fear of failure, basically.
Not even fear of failure. I mean, everyone has fear of failure, which creates drive. But I think like failure in itself creates more drive, because then you realize, okay, hey, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't fast enough, or whatever it was. And then you look back, okay, well, how do I get better? How do I change myself to be where I want to be? And I always had this quote from a very young age, and I kind of applied it to everything I did, sports, training, school. And it was another Churchill quote. Some people dream of success while others wake up and work hard at it. And right there, that's probably my top down favorite quote of all times, because it just shows that some people want things. Other people want things more, and they will do anything to get to those goals. And if it's one thing I tell people, or people listening to this podcast, is find what you want.
Yeah.
Go get it, and don't stop till you succeed. And then once you succeed, find something else that's going to challenge you.
Find the next thing. Exactly. And that's what I love about David Goggins too, is like, he just keeps finding the next thing. He just stays hungry, just keeps finding the next challenge to overcome, keeps finding that next obstacle to overcome. And I think another good quote that goes along with what you just said is a goal, because it's back to the dreaming thing too. A goal without a plan is simply a wish. And I think that's really good quote, because I talk to so many people who have goals, and I ask them, how are you getting there? And they have absolutely no idea. So it's about having that knowledge base and that understanding as well, because one thing that can help with motivation is understanding that, the gym isn't just so that you can pick up weights and look good. There's so many other secondary effects of working out, like all the transferable skills that we talk about, like, the discipline, fear management, all the organization that goes into it, being, disciplined with your diet, all of sort of these things. Like, we talk about physiological changes that you get in the gym, being able to sleep better, have elevated moods, more energy throughout the day, better sex life, just sort of all of this stuff that I think is not in people's minds when they think about getting to the gym or working out. And I think it's kind of back. We talked about this in the last episode about how people just have that like bodybuilding image of the gym. They just have that like, oh, I don't need to go to the gym because I'm not trying to become a bodybuilder. Well, that's not the reason why you have to go to the gym. I'm just trying to be healthy because, quite frankly, after puberty, your body is just slowly digressing on this path. So you can either stimulate it to make progress because it's an adaptable machine, or you can let it do its thing and slowly digress until you want to die, basically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people view the gym as, something they have to do or they want to do, and they don't really see the benefit side that we see, or the alternate side that we kind of see that helps build capacity. So I always tell people, look at the gym as work or school or something you're passionate about. What do you do towards that stuff that you pay attention to, that you constantly keep up with? If you applied a little of that to the gym or a little of that to other aspects of your life, you're going to have more freedoms at the end of the day, and you're going to have more drive. And I think a lot of people just focus on, oh, I'm just going to do one thing, and that's going to be my focus. But like you said, they don't have a plan. And if they don't have a plan, then you revert back to failure. And I think those two go hand in hand. And then once you said it's like a wish, I think a lot of people wish for things. They don't want to
work for it. And this quote fits right in. If you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. And I love that quote.
So I always tell people, you got to have a plan of attack, and it doesn't have to be, a crazy plan. It can just be like, hey, I'm going to do A to get to B. Simple as that. Some plans are going to be more in depth. Some plans aren't, but you have to figure out what you want to accomplish and then how you're going to do it, because people can wish and they find whatever they want, but they always forget, or they can't see how they're going to do it. They just say, oh, I'm not going to be that lucky, or, I'm not that fortunate, or this is just too hard. It's like, no, figure out the steps.
I'm glad you brought difficulty up, because I feel like people, it's sort of in our human nature to want to look for the comfort or look for the ease or the convenience. Yeah. And even through the past 30, 40 years, that's sort of everything that we've done is in a way to make things more convenient for people, to make things easier for people, so that, basically you can just do anything you want, talk to people, order food, and just sit in your house and be in your underwear all day. So that hard work piece, back to a Denzel Washington quote that he said in one of his speeches, another really powerful quote that sticks with me. And he goes, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. And it's so true. Like, our body does sort of this natural path of least resistance as probably a way of, survival, right? Look at the ancestors. They were trying to do things that would obviously be easy on them, so they weren't going to possibly die in a high risk behavior. You have to accept that, we're not living in that primal of a time, but you still have the capacity to get your body to whatever it is you want. And, Wim Hof, David Goggins, these guys are just pioneers and examples of, if you really want to do something and you work hard enough at it and you're disciplined and focused on it, you can do it. One more quote I'm going to say, and I'll let you take the stage here, is just, if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. And that one comes up in my mind a lot all the time when I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. And then I analyze that for a quick second, like, well, is it just me being lazy? Is it something I can do? Is it important to me? Or am I really just making an excuse right now? And It's just such a good quote to help put things in perspective.
Oh man, I could listen to these motivational quotes all day. And and on the side note, I tell people, find a list of quotes and start your day off by reading a quote. Hopefully that can change you.
No, that's such a good way to do it, though. You're so right. I mean, I even had, like you said earlier too, like write it down and put it somewhere that you can see it every morning. Like one of your favorite quotes or whatever fires you, write it down, put it next to your bed so you see it every morning you wake.
And then write your goal next to it. Just a little help to get you on the right path and path of least resistance, because I think nowadays we've kind of created this cycle where people think, oh, hard work's too hard, I don't want to do it, there should be an easy way out, or there's a pill for that or medication for that, when in reality that's not true. There's no real easy path. From experience, if you want to get to where you want to be, there's going to be hardships, there's going to be days where you're upside down, chaos all around you, but on the other end of that, you're going to turn around and see what comes out of that. That's going to morph you into that person that you're going to be. And I think that people don't take that path, don't ever get morphed into what they potentially could be. They're just leaving all their potential on the easy route. The nice smooth paved road, not the one with, sticks, stones, dirt, hills, trees, you name it, whatever obstacles there are. And I think a lot of people don't realize what they can actually do if they put their mind to it. And
yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame because the people that I would want to hear this discussion the most are probably not even listening to fitness type podcasts. For our listeners, like, I hope that the takeaway from this episode is that, if you were only extrinsically motivated before with some sort of basically reward system, that's great, but somehow try to transition it into like really being internally fired up and internally driven. And I hope that people go find those failures, because the quicker you find all those failures, the quicker you find that success. Work hard. And, I hope this inspires people out there to go after something they have maybe just kind of been thinking about or had been saying they've been going after, but never really lit the fire under their butt. But yeah, I mean, again, we could talk about this all day. I love this stuff because this is the type of stuff that I mentally needed growing up, and it's allowed me to become. I'll be the first to say I'm no way in any shape or form, have a perfect mindset or gym routine or whatever, but I've gotten better. And that's all that's important to me, is that I continue to get better, whatever way it happens or pace it happens, as long as it's going in an improvement fashion, then I'm happy. But I think we talked about Viktor Frankl last episode, but if there is anybody who's listening to this podcast who can't really find their motivation or still searching, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, go read it. It's a quick read, but it's powerful and it will help you find your path.
Totally. And if you haven't checked out the previous podcast on mindset, go back and listen to that. They'll kind of give you an insight and prep you for this one a little bit. And I think a lot of times, I know we kind of covered Frankl last time, but like people's purpose and drive, I don't know if it's gone nowadays or if it's just on the back burner because they don't see themselves where they want to be. We're not going to hit the audience maybe we want to. And I'm not up here trying to get people, to find their drive. I mean, I can encourage that, but I want them to go find it themselves. And that's why I think the whole purpose of all these quotes, go find your purpose, your meaning, your drive. These should just be little, almost like throwing gas on a fire. I want to be able to ignite that fire of drive in you. And then you're just not going to stop until you get where you want to be. In, speaking from both of us, I think we're at the point now where we've kind of seen this develop from our failures in life.
Right.
And we're at a point where, this tough situation comes up. We're just like, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to be better. But we have that mindset and drive of like, okay, this is not going to stop us.
No. And I definitely was afraid to fail, but now I don't mind it. And I look forward to it if it's going to happen. But I'm also just confident in continuing moving forward and just knowing that whatever comes up, and stuff will come up, that I'm going to tackle it accordingly. And one of the quotes, actually, this is a quote, but also my grandmother added to it. And she said to me when I was younger, she was like, Matt, there's only 3 things in this world you can count on: death, taxes, and change. And that last one's so important because I think a lot of us try to do something in a way that like, okay, well now I don't have to worry about that anymore. And like, no, you're going to have to. You're going to have to adapt. Everything's there's no absolutes in life. The only absolute in life is that there is no absolute in life. And you have that openness in your head that, yeah, you created this policy or you wrote this program or you did this nutritional routine or you did that 30 minutes on the stair mill, but it doesn't end there. You're going to have to adapt. Yeah, I think we kind of covered a lot of the quotes we wanted to talk about, what motivated us. And I say we end with maybe, because I have some quotes on here that I didn't talk about, but why don't we talk about maybe a quote that we haven't discussed that we want to say. All right, so my quote, it comes from Bruce Lee, and he goes, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do." That's pretty self-explanatory.
I love it. And I think after all this talking about, failures, plans, pick yourself up, whether you're at the bottom of a ditch or the top, and do more. Just keep doing stuff in life because life will happen around you. It's going to move by fast. And if you don't do anything, it'll leave you behind. If you do something, you're going to change your mindset and you're going to change it for the good.
Oh, it's such a good way to end this one. And I'm really happy about everything we touched on. And again, please write in if you have any questions or maybe you have some quotes you'd like to add. It's thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. Next week, we're going to be going in depth into the squat. And that was it for today's episode.